I never thought the day would come when my own son would look at me like a stranger. I raised him with scraped knees and bedtime stories, with prayers whispered over his sleeping face and lunches packed in brown paper bags. I was there for every fever, every heartbreak, every dream he was brave enough to say out loud. So when he stood in front of me that afternoon, arms crossed, eyes avoiding mine, I knew something was wrong long before he spoke. "Mom," he said, his voice flat, rehearsed, like he'd practiced it in his head. "My business partner doesn't like you, basically. You're not welcome here." The words didn't land all at once. They floated in the air between us, unreal, like they belonged to someone else's life. I smiled at first, thinking it was a joke that hadn't landed well. "What do you mean, not welcome?" I asked softly. "This is your office. I just came to bring you lunch." He sighed, rubbing his temple the way he used to when he was stressed in college. But back then, he would lean into me. Now he leaned away. "This isn't about lunch. Things are different now. We're trying to build a professional image. You showing up unannounced. It's not appropriate. Unannounced." The word stung. I had spent 18 years announcing every part of my life around him, every sacrifice, every choice. I looked down at the paper bag in my hand, the one with his favorite sandwich, cut the way he liked since he was 7. Suddenly it felt ridiculous. I didn't know I needed permission to see my own son, I said, my voice trembling despite my effort to keep it steady. He didn't meet my eyes. "It's not my rule. It's just how things have to be." That sentence hurt more than the rest. Not my rule. As if he were powerless. As if the man I raised had already chosen sides. I nodded, because I didn't trust myself to speak. I turned and walked out before the tears could fall. The elevator ride down felt endless, every floor taking a piece of my dignity with it. When the doors finally opened, I stepped outside into the noise of the city, surrounded by strangers who had no idea my heart had just cracked open. I sat at the kitchen table for hours, replaying the moment over and over. I wondered where I went wrong. Was I too present, too supportive? Did loving him too much somehow make me disposable now? That night, I barely slept. Memories kept intruding: his first bicycle, his graduation cap slipping over his eyes. The night he told me he wanted to start his own business and I emptied my savings without hesitation. I remembered telling him, "No matter how successful you become, I'll always be right here." I didn't realize right here had an expiration date. The next few weeks were quiet, too quiet. He didn't call. I didn't want to be the clingy mother his partner probably warned him about. So I waited. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped, only to sink again when it wasn't him. One afternoon, a neighbor asked casually, "Isn't your son opening a second location downtown?" I saw something about it online. Online. That's how I found out. Not from him. Not from a proud phone call. I went home and searched his name. There he was, smiling confidently in a photo beside a tall man in a tailored suit, his business partner. They looked like a perfect team. Successful, polished, untouchable. In the comments, people praised his ambition, his vision, his leadership. Someone even wrote, "He must be so proud to make it without family drama holding him back." Family drama. I stared at that comment until my eyes burned. Was that how he described me now? A week later he finally called. His voice was rushed, distracted. "Ma, listen, I just wanted to check in. Things are busy. I've heard about the new location," I said gently. Thought there was a pause. "Yeah, I meant to tell you." I almost laughed. "Meant to tell you." The phrase felt hollow. "I'm happy for you," I said, and I meant it. Even through the pain, I still wanted him to succeed. "Thanks," he replied. Then, hesitating, "Look, about before, I hope you understand. This partnership is everything right now. I can't afford complications." Complications. That's what I had become. Not a mother, not the woman who believed in him when no one else did. Just a complication. "I understand," I said, though my chest felt tight. "I'll give you space." After the call ended, I sat alone in the silence, realizing something painful but true. Giving him space meant he might never come back on his own. But what I didn't know then was that the story wasn't finished. Because sometimes, the people who push you away the hardest are the ones who will need you the most. And sometimes, the truth about loyalty, power, and love doesn't reveal itself until everything else starts to fall apart. The distance between us grew quietly, the way cracks spread through a wall before the collapse. Weeks turned into months, and my son's life moved forward without me in it. I watched from the outside, through screens and secondhand updates, like someone observing a stranger's success story instead of her own child's. I stopped calling, not because I didn't want to hear his voice, but because I was afraid of what it would sound like, not polite, rushed, obligated, the kind of tone people use with acquaintances, not with the person who once held their hand crossing the street. Every morning, I still woke up early out of habit. I still made too much coffee. I still caught myself thinking, I should tell him this whenever something small happened, that I'd remember my place. Or rather, my lack of one. One evening my phone rang unexpectedly. His name flashed on the screen, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. I answered on the second ring, trying to sound calm. "Mom," he said, "I need a favor." That word favor hit differently than I misuse who have. "Okay," replied cautiously. "What is it?" He explained that an investor dinner was coming up. Important people. High stakes. He needed my old house documents, property records from years ago because the business was being structured under assets tied to family holdings. Things I barely understood but had trusted him with when he asked. "I need them tonight," he said. "Can you bring them to the office?" "The office is the same place I wasn't welcome." There was a pause. Then he added, "After hours, it'll be empty." After hours. Like a compromise that still managed to remind me where I stood. "I'll bring them," I said. When I arrived, the building was quiet, lights dimmed. He met me in the lobby instead of letting me come upstairs. He thanked me quickly, flipping through the papers without really looking at me. He looked tired, older, successful, yes, but tense, in a way I hadn't seen before. "You okay?" I asked softly. He nodded too fast. "Just busy." I wanted to say 100 things. I wanted to ask if he was happy, if this life was worth the distance, if he ever missed me the way I missed him, but I didn't. I had learned my lesson. I handed him the folder and turned to leave. "Mom," he said suddenly. I stopped. "Thanks," he said, "for understanding." Understanding. Again. I walked out into the cold night, telling myself not to cry until I got home. I didn't make it. A few weeks later, the story began to change. Slowly, at first, a missed call here, a rushed voicemail there. His confidence started to fray at the edge. I could hear it in his voice, the pressure, the exhaustion, the fear he was trying not to admit. One night, he called past midnight. "Are you awake?" "Yes," I lied. "I always was. They're pulling out," he said. "The investors. My partner says we'll recover, but..." He trailed off. "But you're scared," I finished gently, silent. "I shouldn't have built everything this fast," he admitted. "I shouldn't have trusted him with so much control." I closed my eyes. What happened? He explained that his business partner had begun making decisions without him, signing deals, moving money, rewriting agreements. Every concern my son raised was brushed off as emotional, unprofessional. The same words that had once been used to describe me. "He says family makes people weak," my son said quietly. "He says emotional attachments cloud judgment." I swallowed hard. "And what do you think?" Another pause. Longer this time. I think I listened too much. That night, after the call ended, I sat in the dark and realized something painful but powerful. The very thing he had pushed away was now the thing he needed most, someone who cared about him, not his success. But I didn't rush back in. Love doesn't mean erasing boundaries. It means standing firm, without bitterness. Days later, I got a message from a number I didn't recognize. It was his business partner. The message was short, cold. "Please stop interfering. Your presence is destabilizing." I stared at the screen, my hands shaking not with fear, but clarity. I hadn't interfered at all. I had stepped back. And yet, somehow, my existence was still a threat. That's when I understood the truth. This wasn't about professionalism. It was about control. A week later, everything unraveled. My son showed up at my door unannounced. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. His suit was wrinkled, his confidence gone. "They locked me out," he said, his voice breaking. "Counts, office access, everything." He used clauses I didn't read carefully. Clauses I didn't think he'd ever use. I stepped aside and let him in. He sat at the same kitchen table where I had once waited for his calls, the same table where I had questioned my worth. Now he sat across from me, shoulders slumped, eyes filled with regret. I was wrong, he whispered, about everything. I poured him coffee, not because it would fix anything, but because some instincts never die. I chose success over you, he said. And I told myself it was temporary, necessary. I didn't realize what I was losing. I listened. I didn't interrupt. Healing doesn't come from lectures, it comes from being heard. I told you you weren't welcome, he said, tears finally spilling. I let someone convince me that loving my own mother made me weak. I reached across the table and took his hand. Loving someone has never made anyone weak, I said. Forgetting who you are does. He broke down then, the way he hadn't since he was a child. And in that moment, I didn't feel victory. I felt sorrow for both of us. Because part 2 of our story wasn't about punishment or revenge, it was about consequences. About learning, too late, that some doors don't close loudly, they close quietly. And by the time you notice, the silence is overwhelming. But the story still wasn't over. Because what my son didn't yet know was that the same partner who pushed me out was about to push him down even harder. And part 3 would be where the truth finally came out about loyalty, about power, and about the kind of strength that money can never buy. The morning after my son slept on my couch, the house felt different, not healed, not fixed, just quieter in a way that carried weight. He woke up early, the way he used to before school, sitting at the table with his phone in his hands, staring at message he didn't know how to answer. I don't know what to do, he said finally. Everything I built, it's slipping away. I sat across from him, watching the boy I raised and the man he had tried so hard to become collide in the same tired body. Then stop trying to save everything at once, I said. Start by saving yourself. That day, he told me the whole truth. The parts he'd hidden, the parts he'd ignored, how his partner had slowly isolated him, convincing him that family was a liability, that independence meant cutting emotional ties, how every success came with a condition, every compromise pushed a little further than the last. He said you were a distraction, my son admitted, that you reminded me of who I was before the money. I nodded. And who were you before the money? He didn't answer right away. Then his voice cracked. Someone better. The legal battle began quietly. Documents reviewed. Emails uncovered. Clauses analyzed by people who spoke in careful language and warned us not to expect miracles. His partner had been smart, too smart, but not lawless. One afternoon, while sorting through old files, I found something my son hadn't seen before. An original agreement, a version signed early on, before evictions, a clause protecting personal assets, family-linked holdings that had never been properly overridden. He stared at it, disbelief washing over his face. This could change everything. It didn't restore his company overnight. It didn't undo the damage, but it gave him leverage. And leverage gave him time. When the confrontation finally came, I wasn't there. I didn't need to be. Some battles aren't won by presence, but by preparation. He came home that night, looking exhausted, but different, lighter. He didn't expect me to push back. He said he thought I'd fold. And did you? I asked. No, he said quietly. For the first time in a long time, I didn't. The business shrank. Deals were lost. Appearances faded. The version of success my son had chased slipped through his fingers. But something else began to take its place. He started rebuilding, slower, smaller, on his terms. Weeks turned into months. He called me every day, not for advice, not for favors, just to talk, sometimes about work, sometimes about nothing at all. One evening he said, I want you to come by the new office. I froze. Old pain surfaced instinctively. Are you sure? I asked. Yes, he said without hesitation. You're welcome, always. The office was modest. No glass walls, no polished arrogance, just a space filled with work and intention. He introduced me to his small team not as a formality, not as an afterthought, but as his mother, with pride. This is the person who believed in me before anyone else did, he said. I felt something in my chest loosened. Not completely. Healing isn't instant, but real. Later that night, he apologized again. Not dramatically, not desperately. Just honestly, I'll let someone convince me that love was a weakness, he said. I won't make that mistake again. I looked at him and saw, not perfection, but growth. And that was enough. People ask me now how I forgave him. The truth is, forgiveness wasn't a single moment. It was a series of choices to stay open, to stay kind, to let love outlast ego. Because in the end, my son didn't lose everything. He lost the illusion that success means standing alone. He lost the belief that power comes from control. He lost a partner who never saw his worth beyond profit. And what he gained was himself. And as for me, I learned that being pushed away doesn't mean you stop loving. It means you learn to love without losing yourself sometimes. The hardest lessons come wrapped in rejection. And sometimes the door that closes on you is the same door that teaches someone else how to come home.